Hi everyone, it's John Mitchell, and in today's video we're going to go through how businesses can use key performance indicators to help measure their performance. So KPIs, or key performance indicators, are the criteria used to measure the success of a business's ability to achieve their objectives. Now obviously businesses are looking to become more effective by achieving their objectives and also achieve those objectives as efficiently as possible. Now KPIs can help measure that effectiveness and efficiency, and that's what they can be used to do. So once the managers actually have data from KPIs, it can help them make really informed decisions because they've got data that they can use to help guide them through those decisions. Without KPI data, a manager is likely going to find it quite difficult to not only make decisions, but also to assess the effectiveness of the strategies that they're actually implementing. So it's a really important aspect of businesses. So our study design lists a whole range of key performance indicators. I'm going to go through each one of those in this video. Now in class, you may actually learn more than those that are listed in your study design, and that's absolutely fine. But for the purpose of this video, we'll go through each of the ones that are listed. And the first one that is listed is market share, or percentage of market share, which is the proportion of sales a business has compared to the total sales in the market, and it's expressed as a percentage. So it can be good to think about market share in terms of a pie chart. Now, there's always 100% of sales in the market, and that's what it's used to measure. And market share simply looks at what percentage or what proportion a particular business has of all those sales. Or it can even be looked at in terms of a particular product that a business is selling. So if we look at the chart on the right here, you can see that we have market share for the mobile phone sales in Australia all the way back in 2010. And you can see that the market share is dominated by Apple, BlackBerry, with Samsung only taking up around 1% of the market sales. Fast forward to June 2020, and you'll see a significant shift that's happened in the market. Now, while Apple has dropped slightly in their market share, you can see that they're still dominating the market, but you can also see there's been a significant change with Samsung now taking up 25% of the market share, and BlackBerry and Nokia are almost non-existent. The next KPI we have is net profit. So net profit is found on the last line of an income statement, and as a result, you'll often hear it called the bottom line. So net profit represents how much money a business actually has after all the expenses, including taxes, have been paid and deducted from the revenue that's been earned by the business. So revenue, that's the money that comes into the business through the sale of its goods and services, and then expenses represent all the money flowing out of the business that's used to actually sell those goods and services. So if we look at a really basic example, we have here a business that's bringing in $55,000 worth of revenue. However, to operate the business in order to make those sales, the business has spent $35,000 or has $35,000 in expenses that's actually leaving the business. So what's left over is net profit, and that is $20,000 worth of net profit. Now, there are lots of different types of profit that businesses can look at in terms of their key performance indicators. However, this is not an accounting course, and you're not expected to know all the accounting definitions and things like that. So you don't need to know all those ins and outs of all the different types of profits, but it does point out that you should be really specific when using this KPI. So rather than using the KPI of just saying profit, because there's a whole range of different profit, types of profit that businesses can look at, it's really good practice to be specific and label the KPI as net profit. Now, rate of productivity growth measures the amount of outputs produced compared to the amount of inputs or resources that are being used, and the rate in which this is increasing over time. So that's a really good measure of efficiency for a business, as it can really help them determine how well their resources are being used to actually produce their outputs. So businesses are often looking at their processes and the ways they can improve their efficiency so that they can improve their productivity or their productivity growth. And that can help the business improve the speed in which they're able to produce products, or can lead to increased profits, as it can often cost less to produce each product or each output when they improve productivity growth. The next KPI is number of sales, which is the amount of goods or services that a business has sold over a specified period of time. It's a really important KPI, obviously, as it allows the business to compare sales from one period to the next to see things that they're doing well, obviously sales being the lifeblood of a business. So it can help measure the effectiveness of all the strategies that they're actually implementing that are designed to improve sales, whether that be where they're putting their products, whether it be advertising campaigns, anything like that. But essentially, without sales, the business is likely to fail, as there's no revenue coming into the business. So clearly a really important indicator for businesses to use, as that's what they are designed to do, is to sell things. Now, rates of staff absenteeism is a measure of the number of employees that actually don't turn up to work when they are expected to be there. So as part of an employee's entitlements, they're often entitled to a number of days that they can take off for being sick or caring for members of their household for being unwell. Now, employees will naturally do that from time to time, become unwell and need to spend time at home to recover or look after a loved one. That's just part of life. However, this indicator, so rates of staff absenteeism, can be an important indicator because if this number is increasing over time, it may indicate that there's an issue with employee morale or something like that within the business. It could be that the employees are not enjoying their workplace or feel unsafe at their workplace and decide to take more days off than they would if they actually enjoyed coming to work. So monitoring the rates of staff absenteeism over time can help provide information for the managers to investigate to see if there are actually any issues that are impacting employee morale within the business and causing them to take more time off than's expected. So we now move to the level of staff turnover. So this measures the rate in which people leave the business and need to be replaced. So this can be a really good indicator, another indicator to measure staff morale within the business. So if the level of staff turnover is really high, it might indicate that the employees are unhappy while working at the business or again feeling unsafe or anything like that and they want to get out. So when employees leave the business, a manager can then decide to perform an exit interview to help find out the reasons why they're leaving, and then they can use that information to help identify any specific problems that can be rectified to try and lower the staff turnover, because it can be really expensive and costly for a business that has a high level of staff turnover, because it costs money to actually employ new employees through advertising and conducting interviews and those kind of things, as well as it takes time for then the new member to get used to their job, and therefore there's lower productivity often while they're getting used to their new role. It's also important to note that the level of staff turnover measures those employees that are leaving but need to be replaced. So that means that if a business goes through a restructure, for example, and decides to make a number of jobs redundant, those specific jobs do not need to be replaced and therefore aren't included in the calculation of any staff turnover for the business. However, employees that are leaving due to retirement or resignation because they want to work elsewhere or for other reasons, they will be included in the calculation. So it's really about the employees that are leaving but need to be replaced. If employees are leaving and no one needs to replace that particular job, then that wouldn't be classed as staff turnover. Those that are leaving and need to be replaced is classed as staff turnover. The next KPI is the level of wastage, which looks at the amount of resources and finished goods that are underutilised or discarded during the production process. Now, if you think back to lean management, you probably learnt that wastage can be physical in terms of materials that are being discarded, so those real tangible things that you can touch and handle, or they can also be intangible with wastage in terms of coming in areas such as excess transport or excess motion and those types of things. Now, again, this can be a really good indicator to measure how efficient a business is being and if they're making the best use of their resources. And all resources essentially cost the business money. So having high levels of wastage, it's a little bit like throwing money away. So reducing the levels of wastage is an important factor because it can save the businesses lots of money. Now we're down to the last couple, and the next one is the number of customer complaints, which is the amount of customers that are notified the business that they are dissatisfied with the business or its products. Now obviously a business would be looking at ways to try and reduce the number of customer complaints they have, because unhappy customers is going to be less likely to attract repeat customers, as well as potentially harming the reputation of the business and making it more difficult to get new customers through the door. Now it's important for you to understand that KPIs need to be measurable. So a customer complaint isn't just the amount of people that are unhappy with the business. In order for the business to be able to measure that KPI, it needs to be that the customers are actually notified or have notified the business in some way of their dissatisfaction, and therefore the business can actually measure that. And the final KPI is the number of workplace accidents, which is the amount of unplanned or uncontrolled events that occur within a business and they result in personal injury or property damage. Now, business has an obligation to adhere to all occupational health and safety standards stipulated in the Safe Work Act, and employees also have the right to be safe at their workplace. And it's therefore, it goes without saying that businesses will look to have a very low number of workplace accidents, or none if possible. But if workplace accidents are high, it can impact morale within the business, cause industrial action, as well as risk the life of employees. So businesses will obviously look to implement strategies to try and reduce the number of workplace accidents that they have. So that covers all of the KPIs listed in our study design, but before we finish up, I just wanted to mention something about benchmarking. Now, it's important that when a business actually looks at the KPI data, they have something to measure or compare that data against. Now, if we look at an example here of EcoMe, which manufactures natural cleaning products, let's say it has a number of sales for the last quarter or the last 3 months of $30,000. Now, if I was to ask you if that was a good result, you would probably find it difficult to actually come up with an answer as to if it was or it wasn't. Now, if sales for the same time last year for EcoMe were $25,000, then you would think it's a relatively positive result, and that's fair enough. However, if the sales for the same quarter last year were $130,000, then obviously likely it would be a really disappointing result. There are other factors that could be at play as well. So for example, it could be that EcoMe had released a marketing campaign over the past 3 months, and we were expecting to have much more than $30,000 as a result. So my point here is that it's important for businesses to have some form of benchmark to measure the KPI against. So with EcoMe, it could be that they wanted to compare the results of the sales from the previous 3 months, or it could be that they want to compare the sales for the same period, the same 3 months the previous year. But having something to compare or measure the result against is important, and we call that simply a benchmark. So just to recap, key performance indicators are the criteria used to measure the success of a business's ability to achieve their objectives, and there's 9 specific KPIs that you need to know because they're listed in our study design, and therefore you can be asked specifically about them. So businesses will use those KPIs to see if they're achieving their objectives, and they'll likely then implement strategies or policies and the like to respond to the KPI data that they receive from using them. So for questions and to find out more about our exam preparation lectures for this year, then come on over to teachingbubble.com.